YouTube channel for it. Okay. Pretty sure we're live. Want to say we're live? I think we're live. Yes, we're live. All right, everybody, welcome back to We're Aquarius. Because we are Aquarius. You're not Aquarius. We're Aquarius. So get out of here with all that. I'm kidding. It's a joke. You can laugh. You can laugh. You can laugh as hard as you want, as little as you want.
Well,
You can laugh. You don't have to laugh
nobody
at
would
all.
get that.
It's fine if you don't, but you know,
Nobody's laughing. It's good.
I'm sure
It's
at
good that
least
you know.
3 people are laughing. Three people, 2.5 people. Okay, 2.5 people are laughing at that. I know
You
for
just
sure.
offended our midget audience member.
I never said it was a midget. I'm saying 2.5 people. That means one person's just a half a person. The other part could be cyborg. You never know. I have a robot friend. Pretty sure there's a robot or at least half a person watching. That's half cyborg, you know. And if you are half cyborg, you know, say hi. That'd be cool. We can maybe do one of these, or you know, do the subscribe thing. It'd be cool too. I don't know. I'm rambling. How you doing, Brad? What's up? Let's do things
Cyborgs
today.
have like all fingers opposable. 5 opposable
I
fingers.
saw a video talking about that. They might put like a thumb on like something like this, like an extra mechanical thumb on your other hand to have like I was like, there's no way. That's crazy stuff.
Well, but I already said before, like, what happens if we put extra limbs or like an extra set of knees in your legs and stuff like that? Like, wouldn't you be able to run 3 times, like, so much faster, just with extra torque of your,
Yeah, if you
you
had
know, or can't you throw just as hard if you can like and like snap your arm? It's like an extra.
I think if you had like you'd either have to have 2 legs on a bat, like 4 extra legs, so you'd have 6 legs, or you'd have a leg underneath you where
Why do you need 6 legs? Why does every animal only have like 1 knee? I want to see animals with like 2 sets of knees.
you know, honestly, I think Odin's horse was just some mechanical thing that we um it was some I think it was a machine. Is because he had a 8-legged horse. Now in Final Fantasy they draw him out like 6, but it was an 8-legged horse. It was extremely fast. I think I don't know, maybe he had a
Imagine if you had a
cyborg horse.
Imagine if you had a shoulder that, like, even though it's 1 shoulder arm, but there's like 3 arms that come out of it, so like they all move simultaneously. So when you punch,
Yeah.
but they're like designed where it's like punch, 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 like at the same time. Be sweet.
Like Goro.
Yeah, yeah. Goro is such a beastie looking creation.
I wonder if they did that back in the day.
Remember he just like would grab people and then just like.
Yeah,
While he's just, like,
grab by
grabbing.
the arms and the other 2 just go. And,
Of course,
and
when you
wail on.
rewatch that movie, you realize how fake Goro really looked. They really did. Like the original one.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd even
Kinda.
have 6 arms. I think you could probably have 4, but 6, I don't know. Or did he have 4 arms?
Nah, Goro only had 4 arms.
I almost thought he had 6.
Nah, he only had 4 arms.
Yeah, I don't remember.
He wasn't that. He Goro was like that. Like he almost could still pass as a human with like some problems, but like he's like a human that had like some kind of lizard and DNA injected into him or something.
Didn't they talk about some kid born in India that was like the representation of some old god that had 4 arms, or something like that?
Really? Wow.
I thought I saw something about that. It was some years ago. And some people say, "Oh, that was a disorder," but how do you like just randomly grow 2 other arms?
Some kid has a tattoo of an arrow coming into his. People just thought it was a birthmark, but he has the ability to move like pretty much all the elements.
He can just do whatever he wants, you know.
Turns out it was both. It was a birthmark, and he was the avatar.
Yeah, about that. So anyways, we're talking about Atlantis. We actually talked about that a lot. We kind of talk about that at different times. I think this is another reason we do the We Are Aquarius thing, is because, well, we want to talk about things that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Things that maybe make sense. Maybe we could correlate together. Maybe we could figure something out. Maybe there's a
Yeah,
reason for all this.
we're the channel that doesn't necessarily have all the answers, but we have a few clues, and we want to share those clues, and we want to be able to kind of, start hearing some other people's clues and
Yeah, we're
understandings
kind
of
of
what they know.
we're kind of a jack of all trades, but we do know some stuff. As far as like the Bible is concerned. Like I've read a lot of the Bible growing up, so I can't quote you the
I don't
quotes.
know
I
how
can
to
tell
build a
you where
rocket
the parts
engine,
are, and
but I'd
certainly,
love to hear someone talk about it.
yeah.
I'd be fascinated. As boring as you can make it sound, I'm like, yeah, listen to every word of it possible. In the end, I still won't know how to build a rocket engine, but I'll pick up a few things and probably
Mhm.
make a few connections that aren't true in that process, and be happy with my life, knowing that I talked to a rocket scientist.
Yeah, that could be good. And hey, Jack, what's up? But yeah. So
I was like,
one thing I wanted to say was like kind of going back into what I said earlier the other week, and I think I'll do this every week because I think it kind of helps in a sense. But because we're coming from the age of Pisces, right, going into Aquarius, this isn't mumbo jumbo thing. This is like actually happening because this is astronomy that happens in our sky and our planet and the world we're in, and everything, all that kind of stuff. I think what I want to say for that is we're coming from this age of schooling, because like the fish, what do they turn into as a group? A school. So we're swimming through this thing as a school, and what do we want to do all the time? We want to learn. But what do we see happening now? What do we see with the next stage? Becoming the star, becoming the hero, becoming kind of greater than yourself in a sense. And maybe that's what Aquarius is supposed to represent, but either way, we can kind of see how we're transitioning mentally and physically as we see the world shifting. And so it's kind of like a sort of a metaphor, but it kind of plays out in real life too. The same stuff that people will say, because to kind of like go on a smaller topic offhand, some people from other societies or some,
getting into our theory idea,
yeah,
right?
but some people from other societies say, well, Jesus didn't actually physically happen. It was just like a representation of stuff. And I'd have to argue, no, it did physically happen, but it happened in the stars, in the signs in the sky, as well as on the ground. So when other people from older esoteric things will say, as above, so below, what it means is as within, so without. As above, so down here. So the same things that are happening, like when Noah prophesied and he could predict what was going to happen. It's going to rain. I got to build a boat. He could see the signs happening, and then he knew it was going to physically happen too. So not only does it happen here, but it also happens up there too. Everything coincides. So the real Jesus existed with the star in the sky that pointed out that he was going to come. So what I kind of want to say is that I think, with the Atlantis thing and all that, I think if we go back into these discussions, we have to see that, it's like Jesus said, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you'll understand. So it's like when I see the birds flying north, the geese flying north right now, it's like summer's around spring's around a corner. I can see the signs. I can see what's happening. Nature and all that kind of like goes forth before the actual things happen.
We read, we can't really, yeah, I know what you mean. That's how time works,
but
basically.
what we see with the news and the weather and what people are trying to say, it's like maybe they're trying to sell you something, but you can see how nature is literally just going to unfold itself before you, before the thing happens. You get little predictions, like if there's going to be.
Well, that's why we got Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, nature will kind of tell you, what's going to happen with some of this stuff, and so we were talking about Atlantis and a bunch of stuff earlier, and I think I think I'll let you roll with that there, but I just wanted to.
Oh, cool. Let me roll with my crazy talk of ideas that come into my head.
Yeah, start talking crazy, man. Just let it
No,
all
feel
out.
free to
Let it
interject
rip.
because,
Yeah.
you definitely had just as much of But we were kind of talking about, again, like the whole idea of cycles, and
Hmm.
I mean, where do you want to start with this? W- the
Well,
initial thought
honestly,
was,
honestly,
because
like
I was
we,
talking about the flood. I was talking about the flood, and I'm still like a big skeptic on the idea of how could it be possible that the flood covered the entire planet. And we never even got to finish the conversation before we decided to go live anyway. But I keep
Mhm.
thinking more and more that above our entire planet was like a lot more water and a lot more like mist and whatnot.
Mhm.
And how would that be possible? I think that down here it had a lot more like water and a lot more mist.
Mhm.
And I think that with all that water and mist in our bodies, we were living for a lot longer. And like you said, I think we were even growing for a lot longer. So I think coming into this next cycle, and it might not be necessarily this first cycle, but like going into it, forward, like I think our bodies are going to start evolving. And I think a lot of people are going to get cut out, and I think a lot of people will survive. And like people, like kids are going to be growing up healthier and bigger and stronger, and it's going to keep happening. Kids are going to keep, and they're going to keep living. Like we're going to keep seeing people living for a lot longer.
Mhm.
And it's going to go against this whole idea of like, oh well, the people were dying from the COVID and all that. I think that that's kind of the end of it all, like
That might be. It might just
but I
be
think
that
it's like, well,
we're.
I think it's like the cleansing, like it's like a cleansing, like when I don't know, I think it's going to get a lot worse though, because there's a lot of pollution. Like I don't think we've ever had so much pollution
Yeah,
created from a previous society.
yeah,
I
but
mean,
I don't know
like,
what's gonna happen. I think it might get purified in a sense. Like if there's a lot of storms and all that stuff, that might just sink into a volcano, and then all that pollution that's in that Pacific Ocean, that's the size of Texas or whatever, that might just turn back into waste that's used by the planet to fuel itself or something like that. Because I mean, I don't know. Maybe something like that could happen. But yeah, we were going to talk about the Atlantis thing. I mean,
what
what
if
is it?
what if
Jimmy
what if
Corsetti
Olymp what if
that was doing the
what if
Bright Inside
Olympus was Atlantis?
Olympus?
Yeah,
Where specifically do they say that is?
Olympus.
Yeah.
I don't I don't know. Maybe Greece.
I don't know.
Mount Olympus.
You know what? I kind of wonder. Maybe that's where they got.
But
Maybe that's where it started. Maybe where the lakes and all that were
but
drying
I'm
off at.
but
But
I'm not saying
what if
I'm
these
saying
other.
that's just the stories, but that's because that's Mount Olympus, named after Olympus. But I'm saying, what if Olympus was the same as original Atlantis, but it was talked about from the opposite side.
Olympus, I would think, would be a city state of Atlantis.
I don't know. It's
Because
just a stupid
apparently they
idea.
say Atlantis
I
covered
just
most of the world. And if that's the case, then these other big places like Egypt, Olympus, and all that, they probably were just major city states of Atlanta. Kind of like how
Atlantis.
Milwaukee and Chicago are considered a metropolis because they're not right next to each other, but they're close enough that, the cities are kind of like making a kind of like two cities into one in a
Well,
sense.
it seems like the previous civilization liked the idea of world travel and big, which is what I was saying before. If there really was a pyramid on the moon, then I really am convinced that the pyramids do teleport in some which way. That you can teleport people. I mean, maybe they were just powerful enough to create a teleportation device.
Or what if it's not
Like
just a, yeah, like a teleportation thing? What if
maybe
the
they were that
energy
strong
from
through
it
the.
can send something through kind of like a ladder or something like that? If you're lined up just right, you can move up it kind of like a, I don't know, like a magnet. It has a draw. I don't know,
I have
but
no clue. But
or
maybe it
if that's
worked.
not the
But
case,
maybe it
maybe it
works.
just
Maybe
sent.
it only works when the water vapor's higher, though.
Maybe the pyramids only worked within the water vapor canopy, if the water vapor
Yeah.
canopy was there, and then maybe um, either that or maybe it was either a way to be telescopic, or send a message.
People have no clue what we're talking about.
I don't know. Like the pyramids, like
the point is that we
people
think
try
that
to put up these ideas to what the pyramids were all about and
Look,
all that, and
I
most
think
of it
that
just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
previous to the flood, that there was a lot of water and there was a lot more water vapor. That's how things like the mushrooms grew. When the dinosaurs and they had to survive off of huge ass trees. It's like you said, the avocado seed is huge because it would be assumed that a dinosaur would probably put that in its poop and put that out to be able to grow again. And it's
That
not.
makes sense.
Those are smaller trees those are like the bushes for dinosaurs.
So that means that
Avocado.
some of the fruits never got smaller again, like the avocado. So in that area, probably animals too didn't get smaller. Wherever that seed came from, that never shrank back down. Because apparently, like, what I think is like, even when you look at the museum with the old helmets and all that from the old warriors of like Sparta and stuff, it's like a really small, it looks like a child was wearing it. What if we're as big as we are based on our atmosphere, and if our atmosphere changes, we shrink, we get smaller? And so not just dinosaurs, they're just animals that got big because the atmosphere was bigger and there was bigger things to eat. Because I went to the museum, even the Milwaukee Museum, that said dragonflies were this big. Why would a dragonfly, an insect, be that big too? I don't get that. Like, I don't get why
I think that
dragonflies
the whole thing is
and insects would be bigger too.
the whole thing
I
is
think
everything
was
about
bigger. Because they
I
talk
think
about
everything
giants
about
and
this last cycle. Look, God even says that he's never going to bring another flood like that. I think that the whole thing was that he made it rain. He made, for some reason, something happened in our atmosphere this last cycle that caused all that water vapor.
Maybe he was just talking
just
about our
rain.
generation, though. Maybe just for our generation. There's no major flood for our generation, because our generation will have this end
He
of
said
the
ever
world.
again. He made that clear.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know.
I'm just saying that I don't think that we're going to get the water vapor back again like it was before.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we were supposed to, and I do think it fluctuates. But I think after the flood, I think it's just going to get a lot weirder.
I think it might.
I think we're going to get a lot of fog and stuff like that, but it's not necessarily going to be.
I think
the way that it used to be.
this cycle is the beginning of what the original cycle was before it got into that. So
Well,
maybe
that's what I'm trying to say.
The beginning
It's
of
not-
creating the vapor barrier.
But it's
again.
not just cycles. You had a whole million years of dinosaurs. You had a whole million years of mushrooms.
Mhm.
You know, you had a whole million years of like weird insect-style creatures that like ruled. Like there's more than just these 26,000 year cycles of things that happen. Things die and decay that create the wave for the next stuff.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
What
Like
if this next cycle
anything,
starts creating new animals? What if that's how animals are born? It's with the change of the atmosphere, and because of the different materials that end up happening here, some things are born, some things die. Because
I think
look at some of those really alien creatures in the ocean that got like all these weird tentacles, and it's got like this big blobby looking thing. It doesn't even look like a normal animal in any way. Not even an octopus. And I've seen some of these pictures of some of these weird ass animals that are in the oceans, and it's like, that doesn't look anything like normal. So what if that's from a previous cycle of something else? Do you know what I'm saying? It doesn't look anything like a normal fish or octopus or
but I
squid.
agree with- I agree with you.
Family, but maybe it was from a previous cycle, and somehow it just escaped the danger. It survived somehow, and that didn't get killed off. What if some of these weird things that you're like, that doesn't even fit into a plant or animal kingdom? What the hell is that? That somehow skipped the destruction it was supposed to face from a previous cycle, and it's still kind of here. I wonder, because, you know, some of these dinosaurs just aren't here anymore. These other animals are just not here anymore. What if this next cycle just...
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that dinosaurs really did have feathers too. Like, I think they looked a lot different. I think we're so ignorant. We just always act like we know
I kind of think,
everything.
because they say chickens were the relatives of dinosaurs, I kind of think it was just giant chickens. They were mostly probably like giant chickens, and they got smaller, and now we eat them. But I don't know. Maybe that's a crazy thing, though. Isn't it weird how, like, even with the Noah's Ark thing back in Kentucky, they say that they had dinosaurs. Why would you put a dinosaur? Somebody's going to eat you, tear you apart, and poop you out
But
on a boat
but what's
with
crazy
you.
about the whole dinosaur thing too is that there were so many different kinds. It wasn't like one style of dinosaur emerged.
Yeah, the pterodactyl,
It's like
which,
all right, but it's like imagine if like cockroaches took over after say humans get like wiped out, all the pollution. Let's say Atlantis does start evaporating more water from our oceans and stuff, and between the extra like like it gets really hot from global warming, right? And let's say that like all the evaporation of everything makes this heat wave of like noxious gas, ammonias from our pee and everything. Like people are just dying. I mean, like people can't handle, you know,
well, I mean, if the
this
volcanoes
kind
and
of like
stuff erupted and all that, then we'd have sulfur in the air to some degree until
that's
it
what I
got
mean. Like you
dispersed.
start getting like, you know, you start getting more people with like filter masks and stuff like that that are,
Maybe that's
like it starts
why.
getting
Maybe that's why we needed the masks. It was not just because we didn't want to have them, but the air quality is
yeah.
different. And maybe not the volcanoes are spewing out the lava. Maybe they're spewing out more sulfur we can't see, kind of like carbon monoxide. You can't see it, and you almost can't even smell it. But like if you have a detector going off, what if that's more in the air
What I think the thing
because
is,
of
all right,
that?
this is what I think. This is what I think. And this is like the whole point of the Atlanteans were a previous like a previous civilization
Hmm.
before, and they survived it. They were able to survive the cataclysmic event that happens every 26,000 years
I don't
that
know if they
tries to
all
wipe them out.
survived it, but probably some because Atlantis, where it is the Raycott Center, that was
Right.
washed over with water.
But I think that they were in the North Pole.
The Hyperboreans, yeah, they were where the
They
North Pole is
they
now, but where they lived there, it was nice and warm. That was essentially it would be
Right.
like
Well, right. They
Australia,
made
right?
they made their thing there. By the time that they, they probably capsuled themselves in. They barricaded themselves in. They had no clue what was going on outside. This is like an underground city that they
Hmm.
made, designed to survive whatever cataclysm. This is like they even geometrically designed it all. Like they were as advanced as they thought they could get, and it did work
Hmm.
except for when they tried to come out of it, they realized that they were under thousands of feet of sheets of ice because they're
Yeah,
now where our North Pole is,
yeah.
and or maybe that's still them, or that was uh that's let's say that's not even where the North Pole is. Let's say that's where the Rickott Center was, but like that was frozen at that time for the, you know what I mean? Like who knows exactly. Either or they come out
Well, if it's
and like
going
you
through
said, they're
cycles and one area could be cold, one, you know what, honestly, it makes a whole lot of sense, and it's not even a conspiracy theory anymore. You know why all the nations have a little sliver of the South Pole and why they're storing seeds there? You
because they
got to
know
think
something's there.
it's just like nature. It's just like nature. They're going to plant there. They're going to have their little country there. It's going to be a warm place there. They even show this a little bit in The Simpsons, where
Yeah.
there's pyramids in Antarctica because there was a pyramid there. They had the previous Atlantis there. What they're trying to do is they're trying to rebuild Atlantis from what they thought they lived long ago, if they believe they were reincarnated from there. So they're going to try to redo it again, in a sense. Maybe not Atlantis per se, but if they're putting it all
But the
there,
Rickott Center
they're putting
is
their eggs in a
Atlantis.
basket. They're putting their eggs in a basket there, and if it warms up there, they already have land there. If everything else goes to hell, they can just go there. So where all the wealthy people will probably go is probably the South Pole. You can't fly over the South Pole. It's a restricted area because you really don't want people going there if you don't want people going there. There's, and you don't go to a cold ass place for no reason. It just makes sense. It's just strategically sound. Like you keep them away from a place that's like, hey, this is where it's
Or
going to be
maybe,
nice and beach and all that.
or
Let's,
maybe the Atlanteans were one generation before it all, and they lost.
the Atlanteans might have been more. I kind of wonder about that. Maybe they were part of the Golden Age, and then when everything went to bronze and iron, then everything went downhill. They're saying we're
But
kind
I'm
of moving
saying
into the
like
Silver
you're right,
Age. So maybe the Atlanteans were where we're coming up to, but then what we have now
but
is
I
just
don't
a
think
bunch of
but
meatheads.
I
It,
don't think it was one cycle ago. I think it was 2 cycles ago.
you might be right. I that very well could be.
I
But
think
then what
that
was the
they were.
last cycle? Who were the? Was it just the Dark Age? Was it the oh, Noah?
Well,
So Noah, and then before Noah, because they talk about Babylon building the Tower of the Heaven. Maybe before Noah was the
I
ending
think
of the
Noah was.
Atlantean
I'm telling
Age.
you, I think Noah was 11,000 years ago because before Noah, you had Leo, and I think that people still lived super long at that point in time. I think there was a lot of civilization going on. The pyramids were even still active. And Noah, it wasn't like you think, because we think back and we always talk about, oh, Noah, and there's no civilization going on with Noah's time. It's stone tools and this and that. But I don't think it necessarily was. I think Leo had a lot of civilization going for that 12,000 year, which basically was, maybe it was like the Atlanteans that they survived it. And,
Yeah,
you
it makes
know,
sense. It makes sense because if you actually look, and even in some games, you look at some history with the Atlanteans, they talk about the automatons or automations. They had robots. We're building robots right now, but they already had robots doing work for them. And then when it moves a little bit further on, it
I
talks
think the
about the
Atlanteans,
Greeks and it talks about the Greeks and it talks about Jewish stuff, talking about iron golems and stuff like that. So they had more cruder types
I
of
just think
robots.
that the
But I
Atlanteans
think
came back
I think they're
and
trying to whatever
some
they
wanted
built,
to
somebody's
learn.
trying to keep it going, I
Some
think.
people wanted to learn. Some people were like, like, oh, this is like the gods. And in the long run, there was ultimately there was just that falling out battle of like the humans didn't want it,
I
and
think
it's all
that was
been
probably where
forgotten.
Atlantis fell, was Babylon. And it was the good people versus the bad people and they started fighting each other and then they probably blew up the tower. Maybe that was the secret symbol behind the tarot card, the tower crumbling, the tower moment. Maybe they blew up the tower with whatever chemicals they had because they were trying to build something. Because they said they were trying to build a tower to God, to the heavens. So maybe they were trying to build a spaceport to get into space. Why would the one
Well,
astronaut be considered crazy later on for saying that they had a pyramid on the moon? Maybe they did it. Maybe they got to the
maybe
moon somehow.
maybe maybe a
And
pyramid can teleport you pretty damn far, but maybe the place where God was a lot further, and that thing was like a cannon that was
maybe
just
they found a
designed to
way to
like.
make a vessel so that they could teleport the soul into an object and have that fly around. Because maybe the body couldn't survive in space, so they just teleported the soul
Yeah,
into
the bottom line was that
something.
prior to Noah, there was a lot of wickedness going on. Like I said, these
Or
pyramids aren't necessarily good technology. I think a lot of people were corrupted. A lot of people, like the Ferengi around here, ripping and dealing people off. Everything was like, just because
or
you wanted to get these
what
kind
if
of
the
certain
pyramid's a
high.
telescope and you make a similar pyramid somewhere else and it lets you see through the what if that's what the eye is on the pyramid? It's like a telescope. You can see if you see through one pyramid, you can see through all the pyramids, and you can kind of see. I wonder if that's just like
Or
a
if it,
way of,
or if a resonating frequency, it allows you just to communicate with someone. But there's
maybe.
no way that people would know how to build it. And
Hmm.
I don't know. It's like I said, it's just the people who built the pyramids were, of a different level. Somehow their cycle
I'd say they're
was clean.
three or four technological advances above us.
I mean, it's not just it's like I said, even if it was that there was you know, the easier to move stones and all that, that we were a little bit bigger because, um, the time period that allows, and I agree. And even if we all lived longer, like bigger mentality changes. When you're going to live 600 years, you start thinking of bigger projects.
Maybe they
When
built the pyramid in a month. If they knew how to either levitate something or they were bigger, maybe both. And then they just made a cast and then they poured the rock into it and that's just concrete. And after all these years, now it's we can see the stone inside because the other materials weathered away and now it's just one type of stone inside. And it's like that's a stone they carved. No, I think they just poured it from a lava
Yeah, I've
bed
always thought
somehow.
they just poured.
They
I've
poured it
always thought
into a
they just poured.
cast, make the cast, drop it down, and move. I mean,
I mean,
if
I
you
think I
have the
think the
technology, you could do
materials,
it.
because they always say, "Oh, well, it's made with the stone from the materials." Yeah, no, I think you're right that they probably knew of the strongest stone that was, 400 miles away. It was much stronger, much more durable.
They heat up the
And when they
stone,
went to,
liquefy
so
it.
they grounded it all down. They transported it back, and then they powderized it, and then they mixed it correctly, and then they poured it and
Yeah,
made the you
that
know.
they yeah they could do that too. I'm
I
just
mean,
saying, like we
I
look at
don't
all
ever
this
see
stuff
why
like
they
there's.
would.
I think the fact is because we're coming out of this Iron Age. Because if we're coming into the Silver Age, moving from this Aquarius, it also coincides with that other Kali Yuga thing. And then that would mean that if we're coming into a higher age, that means we're not at the top age, but we're just at the next age. But the next age moving up, that means that we're all going to start being a lot more intelligent. We're all going to be more wise. We're going to be more truthful. We're going to be more of everything. Not at maybe the top. I don't know. Maybe we could go to the golden age. I'm not sure what the ages are 100% because I keep hearing a lot of different numbers about that. But it just basically means that if we come to understand how things really worked, there's a lot
Well,
less anger.
well, when has it ever
I
been the
mean,
golden age for everyone in the entire world at the same time?
well, maybe Atlantis was the peak of the last golden age. That was Atlantia. It finally became something
I
everybody was
think it.
proud of. And then once it fell apart and it fell down, everybody's reading all these books. They want to try to recreate it. They make these secret organizations to try to keep it somewhat intact. But
Well, that's
those
what I'm
people
saying.
aren't
Is that
necessarily Atlanteans anymore. They're now a part of that age. Like we're a part of this
but
age.
people love to find old buildings. So it's like, all right, so the Atlantis. Let's say Atlantis makes their structure there, and that's their big city where we all see it. And ultimately, you're right. It gets destroyed
They
and all
probably
that.
made all those things like the big light tower that was massive. That was probably Atlantean stuff, Atlantean tech.
I
Sorry.
just think that a lot of it, that all the stories that they heard was because they found stuff. You basically have people 6,000 years ago were just as much archaeologists as people were today. And they found these certain things and they're like, this is from the previous, but they knew because they knew they knew there's more cycles. They knew they were still 6,000 years in, they still knew that there was a massive cataclysm 6,000 years ago and
Hmm.
there was a lot more stuff prior. That was like
Yeah.
common knowledge still for people 6,000 years ago. So
Hmm.
they would, oh, I found this. And, the kings and queens would have these amazing certain things that they would find, these real treasures and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think that's what
And
we ended up getting into is the Iron Age and the Dark Ages were like the very lowest of the low. Jesus could have been at the very lowest of the low in a sense, and where people are just acting like total meatheads. Like, no, I'm the god. No, I'm the god. No, I'm the god. And then I'm taking all your stuff because I'm more important. Like here's my fabricated DNA gene, from which bloodline I come from, and I think it turned. Because I mean, I think that kind of makes sense. Like we go through some of these cycles. Even Futurama shows a little bit of that. Like in the past, it goes to like medieval age, and it all gets shot down by spaceship aliens, and it gets regrown back again. And you go through all the ages again, because you know. But yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then we're about to begin the beginning of what could be the next Atlantis or a new kind of thing. And I think the fact is, going into the next age, even though I don't know
Well,
if
I
we're
think
even
that
going to live to see the whole thing, it's just I guess we have to look at the past and not repeat the wrongs of the past, going forward.
I think that the thing is that people, the elites have been, like I said, the whole Alexandria burning of the libraries and all that is just because certain people wanted to hide certain truths, and they had to burn a lot of the random books to keep the few scrolls that contain. Like I said, that ancient tech,
They
that
probably
ancient stuff.
Yeah, they probably figured if the masses were dumb, we could control them and take their money, and then we don't have to worry about
But
anything.
but it's not even just about money. It's about being the next Noah,
Yeah,
surviving and
it's
getting to start your own world.
yeah, they wanted to be the hero even though they
Right. They
weren't.
want
They
to be
weren't.
the hero. They want to be the Atlanteans, the people with the extra tech that the next generation will treat them like gods and build pyramids for them.
That's because when it all happened and the tech was gone, there was hardly anybody left to know how it worked, and so they looked upon the past generation like gods and had stories about them from the previous generation, and then they wanted to be those gods, but they didn't have the
Yeah,
tech, so
almost
that
all
they
that
just
tech is just destroyed. And if it's not destroyed, it's either hidden or
yep.
kept under completely lock and key and sealed, and no one is going to talk about it like it's
Yeah.
the damn truth.
I think
You
what
know,
ended up happening is probably the Nazis did find some UFO tech from back then, and then they probably, like, some of that could be true. And I'm saying it's probably also America and Russia and other places they found it too, and they probably wanted
well,
to
I
work
want
with
see.
that,
I
or
again,
they found schematics for it and then they recreated it. So
I
that
still wonder if, again, what if what if we found a frozen alien in the north when we were in the North Pole, and we thawed it out and it almost was alive a little bit or something like that, you know, and we just try to play it off like it crashed in Roswell or something like that. But
um, maybe
again, I still
I
think
get the feeling
that
more or less that once this happens, not only do we change size wise, but we might change physically a little bit. They talk
yeah.
about
Well,
elves
I
and
think
I think elves were a certain generation. I think goblins were a certain generation of humanoids. And then once certain things happen, we not only change shape, we might even change pigment too. Because I mean, look at the different skin types we have. Where Native Americans are more red, Indian people can have a kind of a bluish hue to them, even though a darker skin, and everybody has a different kind of pigmentation. What if being where you're at, the types of foods you eat, the type of atmosphere, it, it just changes our physical biology.
yeah. I
And
do.
so
I
when they
think that a
say
lot of it.
alien, it's probably just a person like one of those considered the whites, just a very pure white skin based upon what they were eating at the time, and now that's not available. I mean, because you look like if you go
I mean, you think
live in Florida right now, you're going to start tanning unto the point that you're just mostly tan all the time. But if you live in a like up here in Wisconsin, you're going to be a lot more white. You're going to lose the melanin tone. I think it has something. It just makes sense, dude. It has to be something like that. I mean, maybe an
you think
alien, but I would rather say because of the change of the atmosphere, it just biologically changes us a little bit physically. Because if they talk about giants and the
What if that's
dinosaurs are
how
big,
like angels and demons emerge? All like the demons are gonna just start changing physically out.
I don't know.
I'm
Maybe
angry about. I'm angry about life.
I don't honestly. They talk about some of the stuff with like the Antichrist coming. I think that's the age of Capricorn. If that's the age of Capricorn coming back, the goat fish man, the horns and the tail,
Yeah,
that
that's what
could
I'm
be
saying.
that. So
The age
maybe
of
that's when.
judgment's like 8,000 years from now. The age of Libra. So I'm saying like everybody wants to talk about like, oh, the ending is near. I think this is kind of like midway point. I think we kind of had it
Yeah,
backwards. We think Aquarius is the beginning, but I've always feel like Aquarius is like actually the middle. It's the beginning of
I think it's
the
the
end,
beginning of the
basically.
heroes. I want to say heroes. I don't know why I feel
Yeah,
that always. I keep thinking about it because like look at what we're doing with YouTube and stuff. We're all becoming stars, right? So it's like we're all becoming bigger than life. Whereas before we were in the school, like no, 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 that's the leader. You follow the leader. Whoever that is, whether it's like a political guy or like a comedian or something like that, as what TV did too. Like all these famous actors now, you just see they're trying to do other things too besides just doing the
before you
movies.
followed the general.
Yeah, we followed the main big fish that was in front, and it was like that's he knows where it's safest because he's got the most magnetic north planted in his brain, so he knows where to swim. Yeah, maybe
Now you
that's how it
have
goes
more.
with fish because I know it goes with whales. I know it goes with cows and stuff. Like cows will usually face north or south most of the time. I wonder if that's to do with. Well, I don't know, but I mean, whales will follow the magnetic north with the current, and that's why a lot of them get beached up because they think it's supposed to be here, but it's not there. And if the north keeps moving, then they're going to start beaching up all over the place because they'll be like, no, it's supposed to be here. I remember it. No, you're remembering where the magnetic north is in your brain, Mr. Whale, but you're just a whale, so you don't quite get that. So I think when nature changes, the animals try to fluctuate to it. But let's say north did keep going north, right? The geese are going to keep flying north. They're eventually going to just drown because they're going to fly into the ocean, trying to cross the continental ocean and start drowning in the ocean. So if we see geese start drowning in the ocean in the north, Brad, this is not a good sign. But it could be a good sign because then. But I think you're right. Maybe Aquarius isn't the start or whatever. Maybe it's just one of the changes we go through. But you
Well,
know,
I think it's like, all right, let's say, imagine humans are like flowers,
mhm.
right? Flowers grow and then they get old and then they die. Now, the let's not get into more detail in the fact that they're actually still alive because the roots you can cut it and grow it again and resprout it from nothing practically if you wanted to, The
Mhm.
genetics are in the roots. I get that. That's not the point that I'm trying to make. The thing is,
Yeah,
how does it work
grass
with
is an easier example because you can just chop the
how does
top
it
and then
work
keep going.
with like humans in a sense? We clearly grow, a baby gets bigger and
Hmm.
then eventually we hit like what our I'd say like mid 20s or so and we no longer grow, we just kind of say stagnant until like maybe 40s and then we kind of fluctuate down. I mean, professional athletes speaking and all that are kind of like that in a sense. And
Oh yeah.
people, I think it's general. 20 to 40 though, you're generally even 20 to 30, you feel a little more peaked up. It's not
Hmm.
quite just. I'm sure flowers have the same thing. Where they're in the morning they're blooming out and it's like their strongest, and once they do that initial bloom, that was all the muscles they had. I mean, I'm sure they have different waves too. But I'm saying, like, when we see a flower lose a petal, we'll say it's dying, you know, and like, in a sense, But when we see a 2-year-old, we don't say, "Oh, it's dying." It's still they're growing. They're growing. At what age do you like? It's weird because like I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just kind of like I don't like how we kind of look at everything like, "Oh, we're dying." Like it's just kind of like you should look at it like you're constantly growing and then you die. It's just that our
I think
bodies
I,
our
I
bodies take
honestly
a different journey than our minds, basically, is the
honestly I
point that I'm
think
trying to.
from a spiritual
I'll write that one
perspective, and
down.
sorry, but like to get back to like you know what we talk about mostly with Christianity and all that, I think honestly it's like if you think about going in a vehicle and being the driver of the vehicle, it's much like this. Like, you're in your head all the time because you're in your head. Your body's the vehicle. But once we get out of the vehicle, it's like, okay, I don't need to use the vehicle anymore. I can start moving around. It's very much like that with our soul. Like, I think other people will explain it like that as well. But that's one reason I'm a pretty good driver, for the most part. Like, I get in my vehicle and I feel that I am the vehicle. This shell, I have to make sure I don't touch anybody, you know? And so, typically I've been pretty good with that. But I think when it comes to our bodies and all that, it's very much the same way. We, and even more so, we're even more careful with our bodies than we are with our vehicles because we know if we hit too hard, oh, that's going to hurt. Oh, that's going to have lasting repercussions. Oh, we might not cut our arm off. That could be bad. We know these things, so we live a lot more cautious than we do with our other vehicles. But it's kind of the same way. We know this, as far as like who we are and everything. So like going forward into the next phase when we're going to go, I think the fact is when we know we're going to go, there's people that just know when they're going to go. They're like, I'm going to die at this day. Nostradamus predicted when he was going to die. These other famous people predicted when they were going to die. They knew when they're going to die. My grandpa kind of knew when he was going, and he went within like 3 days of knowing when he was going. My stepdad knew when he was going to go. I even remember a little bit about my own dad trying to talk to me about something, but it seemed like he couldn't really tell me about it. And then a week later, he died. He died in his sleep. So my dad even kind of
I know my grandpa and my mom both like had like nice simple conversations of lucid conversations right before they passed that were like just basic, and then it was really just basically saying goodbye more than it was like
yeah. And I
anything.
think the
No,
fact
no,
is
no,
like,
like metaphors, no deep stories. Just like I love you guys.
mhm.
And that's like
Yeah, even
that's
my grandma, who's like at 90, she might be 98. I think she's at least 97.
wow.
She told me, she said this is her last Christmas, which it kind of hurts inside a bit to feel that, but I'm going to go and see her as much as I can because I don't think she's going to live any more than this year. I think this is it. So I'm just saying, like, when you know you're going to go, and it's like very much like a vehicle. Like, I don't need to use this vehicle anymore. I'm getting out of the vehicle and I'm walking over here. I think it's the same way. I think it's very much the same. So
Vehicles totaled.
hopefully you don't. But I guess I wonder. I think that's what Jesus was trying to basically say about valuing the temple, valuing your life, so that you can have this experience, and to be able to be fruitful for others in that too.
Imagine, imagine if, imagine if, like, as a soul, you have to drag your body back through your own life in order to, in order to get to where you need to go next. Like, you have to literally watch your life again.
This what makes me wonder, like, what if necromancy in one of the ages actually worked? Like they were able to pull the soul back into the body, and then the person was just horrified, and it became kind of like a zombie or something like that, something like Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I mean, that would be a
But
horrible
what if
way.
it wasn't? What if it wasn't Frankenstein? What if they were literally able to keep bodies going?
Found a way
I
for
mean, I'm
immortality.
saying.
What
Listen.
would
I'm
you
a
rot
firm
away, or
believer.
would you
I'm a
not?
firm believer, though. I think one of the generations, if we're getting more back into what we were originally talking about, one of the
Hmm.
generations, and that's where this generation found some of the tech of that other generation. And I think a lot of the other generations also found this tech and committed it as pure evil, do not do, but the power of blood, the entity of consuming what you are to make others do like your bidding and stuff like that. And there's power within blood and consuming,
Oh,
I
you
mean,
heard
look,
about
look,
Elizabeth Bathory, right?
there's witchcraft that even, well, I heard of the name, but that even talks about like period blood that like falls on rats and stuff like that will make the rats go crazy or rabid, or dogs, if dogs get period blood they'll
Hmm.
go rabid and stuff like that. And it's all tied into it.
It's
It's
funny how
because
like
it's
when I,
like
yeah, it's funny how like
it's
I watched.
essences of blood. And blood is very, very powerful. And if it's tied in with the right conjuring and the right, who knows
Mhm.
exactly what else. I don't really know all the details because I don't study it. But, you know, I think that it's what creates vampires. I
Maybe
think that
they had that
vampires
at some point.
maybe vampires survived the last one too. Maybe one
Maybe
of them
with it,
was
yeah.
found, a vampire was found again, either frozen and or like buried. And when they unburied him, he just, like, I'm alive. It's like, how long have you been alive? It's like, you know, I have no
Wow.
clue.
So all this previous stuff gave us maybe immortality to the point that
But that's what I'm
we
saying.
got
It's
so
like,
old and bored we were able to invent all these things, and then we made all these crazy chimeras and vampires and all these weird things that are
yeah,
apparently
I
myth
think that
now.
as like Egyptians found all that kind of stuff. I think going to Atlantis was like taboo. The previous Atlantis and rebuilding it was like a taboo idea. You wouldn't, like, people didn't do it because for
Because
some
what some of
reason,
the bad people did was really bad.
I think that's the whole thing. After Atlantis got wiped out by the flood, like that, got hit by that huge tidal wave and all
It was
that,
like an omen,
I
right?
think it was like an omen to everybody, like this is not the way to go.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, they went over to the Egyptians moved into that area where the pyramid was, and recarved the face and took it over. And I think it was a way to mock the Atlanteans. It wasn't intended to
You might be right.
take,
Maybe they were
it was
trying to
more of like
4K
they're like it's our
display
land
like
now.
what
The
it was.
Egyptian,
It wasn't a lion. It was a man that wanted to be a lion. So they were whatever was carved there before. They're like, nope, this is supposed to be a man trying to be a lion. That's what that was about. Maybe that was what they're trying
yeah.
to say. Because that's a chimera. That's two different animals being merged into one. Or, what they say with other things. But I mean, honestly, that's a chimera right there. That sphinx is a man lion, you know.
Well, I think, see, that's what I mean. I think the Egyptians used some of the old technology anyway,
Well, yeah, they
and
would,
they,
and that's probably
you know,
why the pharaoh was so powerful, and they thought of him as a god. I wonder if the Ark of the Covenant was just some machine that because they say the Ark of the Covenant fit perfectly into the mold in Giza. So if it fit in there, what if it was some kind of electrical machine that created, uh, app like
yeah,
changing the atmosphere?
I think that
Some
that's what I mean. I think that something must have happened that the Atlanteans, after they got wiped out, basically people started taking over, and maybe that's what all happened 11,000 years ago, that the Atlanteans got wiped out. Is
and
that
that was
still
the
the same
sign.
story?
That was a sign to change everything. But then everybody had a different version of that, of the truth. And some people tried to steal it. Some people tried
But
to save it.
the thing is like, okay, if if Noah was the only person to survive, there's no way that you'd have such population growth within 3,000 more years to create people to have like armies against each other again.
Well, if you constantly have kids all the time, because if you're in an apocalypse scenario, let's say we do go through an apocalypse scenario, you might want to have more kids.
I'd have to look that up.
Because I mean, my own parents, my mom's 1 of 10. I mean, they'll have kid. I mean, if you want to have kids, you can have kids, and 10 kids each person having 10 more kids. I mean, that's a lot of people. I think you try to have as many kids as you want, especially in the Dark Ages where they're like the bubonic plague happened. You'd want to have as many kids just so your family line would survive, just so somebody in a family would survive. And I wonder about that too. I wonder if some apocalyptic thing happened at that time too, because that was such a massive plague. That was one of the absolute worst. That was the worst known plague that we've ever known about, because it was three different types: the bubonic, the Black Death. That was the worst plague ever. And I kind of wonder. I mean, maybe the Bible talks about it. I kind of wonder if that was one of the horses. That was the pale horse, the horse of death. I kind of wonder if that was the one, and the other things are going to happen in the Bible, and maybe later. Because I mean, okay, COVID was not great. I don't think it was. I don't know if it was as bad as Spanish flu.
COVID was man-made.
But yeah, it could be.
I mean, they recreated it exactly.
But even if it was man-made, if
can't
it was,
find it in nature anywhere, but they can recreate it in the lab. I mean, come on.
well, if they say they got it from bats, that's the same exact thing that happened with the Black Death, where it came from fleas from rats. I think it comes from insects initially, as like some kind of parasite, and something that lives in a parasite and ends up getting into something that transfers.
Yeah, it's
into
like
us.
an infected amoeba gets an infected flea, or infected mosquito, which gets an infected horse.
Yeah.
Gets an infected person. They just found that the bats seem to have the most, not necessarily infectious rates, but just the most in common reactions, because they're the least common to humans.
The bats got it from the mosquitoes they ate, because the rats got it from the lice that was on them. It all comes from it all rolls uphill.
So what was happening to mosquitoes in Wuhan, China?
We are trying to inject mosquitoes with things to make them not breed, which might bring up their immune system to make whatever bacteria they have stronger. And so now when the bats eat the stronger bacteria, they can't handle it, and now they inject, and now we get it. So what we tried, that's what I think is a real thing that God said in the Old Testament. Whatever we create is evil. We created the thing to try to kill the mosquitoes, which ended up bolstering their immune system, making them stronger, going into the bats, and then hurting us in the end. That could be what it could be, because like God says, whatever man makes is evil. So we try to make something to fix something, but we ended up doing is just messing it up more. It seems like we do this a lot. Like a lot. Yeah. Especially Atlantis is a great example of it. Probably vampires, chimeras, all this kind of crazy stuff came out of the falling of Atlantis. Now Elizabeth Bathory, she was considered one of the first vampires, because she would bring all these women, thousands of women would go to her in her castle. She was a baroness, so she was in charge of a castle, a keep, in a certain area. I don't know if it was Transylvania or somewhere in Turkey or something like that. But she would bring all these women to her castle to try to train them as ladies in waiting for other lords, so they could be trained to be more of a proper woman, for being married and all that. And they never came home. And then after a while, the townspeople were like, "Where's my daughter?" And everybody just trusted these baronesses. They just trusted the higher nobility all the time, because we were just trained to trust them, right? She would slit their throat and bathe in their blood every night. thousands of women, thousands of women were dead because of her. And eventually, once they found out she was doing this because she was trying to bathe in their blood to stay youthful, to stay immortal, they walled her up in her own castle and she starved to death. That's the story of Elizabeth Bathory. That's one of the original understandings of vampirism. Now, yes, there's Dracula too, but that's why, like, if you watch Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, they got Camilla in there, and it's kind of the same story of Elizabeth Bathory. But yeah, what you were saying with the blood, yeah. So what did Madonna do? Because what is milk? Milk is essentially coming from blood. She bathes in milk. She's trying to stay younger. She does look young, doesn't she? For a 50, 60-year-old woman, she kind of looks like she's in her 40s, right? She bathes in the essence of the blood in order to stay younger. These things...
Maybe they just bathe in pure blood.
I don't know. Maybe she bathes in pure blood and then she does a milk bath sometimes just to let people go, it's not blood, it's milk, which, comes from blood. Because where does milk come from?
50% blood.
Milk comes from the mammary glands, which is essentially essence of water from blood. Milk is a thing that helps us grow bigger, helps us get through that growing
I don't know.
phase.
I just think that a lot of people know a lot of truths, and they've done a great job of hiding the truth from people.
And that's what we're coming out of. We're coming out of this age of these separate schools into this new age. But this age of Aquarius is about, I don't know. It's got to be more than that, because it's conversion of one thing into another. But then again, it's just a sign in the stars, really. But does that make it to the point that we want to find a meaning for it, and subconsciously we ended up making a meaning for it?
Are people going to actually fight for other people while they have phones? And I mean, here's the thing. Let's say a pole shift happens. Let's say a cataclysmic event happens. Let's say a lot of people are dead, right? We're talking like 60, 70 million people dead, right? God said he's not bringing back another flood, and that means like he's not going to kill every single thing on the planet and leave one family that he chose. He's not going to do that again, but the events are still going to happen, A lot of people are going to die in this pole shift, right? And no more phones. I mean, like, your idea of like, oh, let me use my phone for help, like, the days of your phone is literally as good as whatever precious metals you can extract from it. And you got to base it.
What we have right now is the last message we can give, so that once we are separate and apart, then we have to come back together, but with the knowledge that we've gained. This is our Library of Alexandria right now. This is our Library of Alexandria moment. And then once it's over, we're going to have to actually come together with the people around us, because you're not going to be traveling hundreds of miles. You might not, there might not, if you're like, well, the electricity doesn't work, but gas works. That's great. But how are you going to pump it up if the gas station's electricity's down? You're going to go there and suck it up with a hose? You're going to do that every gas station you go to? Are they going to be closed? Are going to be people fighting over it? Is it going to be rusting out? How are you going to go anywhere? We're going to be back in the Stone Age in a sense. If that happens, you're going to need to fire up your chimney, or build one, or all kinds of stuff. Like, if things go down and nobody's coming to do anything, you're on your own. But what if this is the time that what we say helps other people to maybe start getting prepared, in a sense? There was an old joke you probably heard about, but this person prayed to God, like, come and save me, it's gonna flood here, and then they started flooding, and they're like, well, God, and then this guy came by in a vehicle, he's like, come on, get on, we I can help you out, get out of here. And the person's like, no, God's gonna save me. And then it kept flooding into the second floor, and I got up on the second floor, and then a person in a boat came by. He's like, come on, get on, I can help you out. And they're like, no, God's going to save me. and then it floods to the roof, and they're on the roof, and a plane or a helicopter comes by, and they're like, "Come on, come on, come on! I'm gonna get you out of here." No, God's gonna save you. The person drowns, and then they go and complain to God, like, "Why didn't you come and save me?" It's like, "Well, I sent a car, a boat, and a helicopter. I mean, what more do you want?" And they're just, oh, I sometimes wonder if that's just what this is. We're just here to help each other because, yes, God is helping us, but kind of using us in a sense, working with us in a way, like through us. Yeah, you could even honestly say that, through us, so that we help each. Because I mean, look at what do you do when you go to church? You're looking for a guy that you think God is using to give you the message you need. What do you do when you go to a store? You're looking for a guy or a girl to help you find the produce you need to eat and survive. What if it's just that simple in a sense? I mean, yeah, it could be more than that. It could be more esoteric in some senses or spiritual or whatever, but I think some things are just like, it should just be plain to see sometimes, you know, just as simple as it could be.
What if the devil was just gonna like create an all-out attack, like just start wiping out cities?
Jesus said it was, good for you to defend your to defend somebody. So I mean, if you can defend somebody and you think you can win,
I don't know. It's like
I
the
think
whole
what he
planet
would want to
feels so
do.
small
I think what he would
anymore.
want to do is make people feel crazy and go crazy, and then the influence of those people going crazy is what ends up creating the riot, ends up creating the fires, ends up creating all this. I think the more calm or the more people can be relaxed in a sense where they can understand the rationality of things. That's why I think this earth is not just like people say it's a school or some people say it's like a heaven or a hell. I think honestly, this is like what the Vikings said, Midgard. This is, we could make it this way, we could make it that way. You can go right,
Yeah.
you can go left. We could choose to make this better, and then everybody around us will be like, hey, this guy's confident. This guy thinks it's going to be fine. I'll be fine. Work together. Or you can be like, the end of the world's happening. Everything's going to hell. Do whatever you want. And then everybody goes crazy and acts like an asshole. You could have it bad. You could have it good. That's what I think. But I don't know what you want to.
Yeah, but we're coming to a cycle that's gonna
And it could be that
destroy
way,
a
but
lot of stuff.
honestly, I think it's based upon how you feel. Like there's a lot of
But
there's a lot of
but
Christians that will
what do
say
you
this it's everything's going to be attacked. I think you're wishing bad things upon
okay,
yourself,
but what? But
and
what are you
then
supposed to criticize people because of? I mean, that's all that's hormones. And not just hormones, but like chemicals in your brain. Look, there's some people who aren't paranoid of anything, and there's other people who you can hear no matter what, they'll wear a mask. It doesn't matter where they are, they're
they
wearing a
wear a
mask
mask in the
all day
shower.
long. They're afraid of the air anymore because they have a high level of paranoia in them.
But they've also been
It
kind
didn't
of
matter.
trained in a sense. We're coming from this age of schooling, so they're in this school of being trained and ingrained and embossed and then carved into their souls. Like this is
But you
what you
understand
do
what I'm
and this
saying?
is what you are. And then they're like, okay, 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 and they
We're
just kind of
literally a
give
bunch
up.
of we're literally a bunch of chemicals fighting with each other.
But here's an
Like,
example. What if I just gave you a banana every day? You didn't have to eat it. I didn't even tell you what to do with it. But eventually you just start eating the banana. Even though you got your other food and all that, but I just kept giving you the banana. You get used to getting that and you'd be like, oh, I don't need to do this because I'm always getting this. You would get used to what you were getting. The same thing happens with media. You're given the stuff on CNN, Fox every single day. Well, we got to worry about. We got to care about what Steven Crowder said, or you know,
what's going on with
Peterson
all
did.
that?
With we got to care about.
I
We
told you
honestly
guys they were all in on it. Remember I told
don't.
you?
We
I even
don't
said it
have
before.
to
I said
care
I said
all the
I said,
time
come on, you
about.
really listen, they want to make Steven Crowder like he's a patriot. Look, I don't care who, because I don't have any followers anyway. Steven Crowder's just as much in on it as everyone else from the Daily Wire, as Tim Pool. It's always about keeping the numbers in control and knowing where
Mhm.
people stand with things. If one number gets too big, You shut them down and increase the other number. You divide and create another faction.
Divide and
But
conquer. Yeah.
conservatives were growing. Steven Crowder doing this right now is just divided conservatives into, do you want a corporate conservative world or do you want a freedom? Freedom no matter what. That's what conservative value is. World. And now you've divided the faction again. And it's just going to keep happening because
I get that
they're
there's
all
going
in
to
on
be a
it.
little bit of that because Jesus said he came to bring the sword. He came to bring division in that sense. But the thing with the corporations is they don't really do a whole lot of good for us now. Not just going into the next stage, but they don't do any good for us right
The thing
now.
about corporations is they'll always want to save face
And the corporations,
before.
because they're essentially corpses, they can't die. It's an entity that can't die.
Exactly. And I hate that. I was even thinking about that. Like, how does that work? If a corporation owns something, right? And then like let's
You
let's
can
go with
blame the
Betty Crocker.
corporation and the
Betty,
person doesn't take any.
look. For instance,
Okay,
whoever, let's
I'll be
go with,
back in one
I don't,
second.
I'm
Go
not,
ahead.
I could be wrong on this concept completely, but I'm just going to make it because I feel like it's a good example despite having no clue. But let's go with Betty Crocker. Betty Crocker makes her Betty Crocker, whatever, I think she actually had a weird life where she started making cakes and all this. And bottom line is she makes her logo. Betty Crocker's dead, she's no longer alive, but the Betty Crocker company owns the logo. Now, the bottom line is somebody, let's say Betty Crocker, let's jump even 100 years in the future for this matter. Let's say somebody who's just randomly drawing one day draws the Betty Crocker logo without ever seeing it. They don't even really know Betty Crocker is. They're diabetic. They don't even eat cakes. They draw it, they love it, they want to make their logo that, and then Betty Crocker sues them because that's their logo. And it's like, but I never even seen your logo, you're stealing, it's like, well, I'm sorry, but we own the rights to it. But it's like the people who made the logo are long dead. The people who owned Betty Crocker originally are long dead. So it's like corporations start existing and they keep buying everything up. Eventually, there's not going to be much room for any person to be able to make or do anything. I mean, look at Disney. If anybody makes any kind of thing close to it, Disney wants to try to go after them and say it's plagiarism. And tell them you can't make that design. And I'm saying like, okay, I understand that it's like, okay, you had a good idea here. Okay, a certain character. It's like it's a great looking character. I love it. But here's the thing. That person who made that is dead. And now you just have a company owning
Yeah,
it.
so that's why it's the
But the
corpse.
but
The
the
corporation
but the
is
company
is
the
from a
company
corpse.
the company shouldn't be allowed to keep. It's like I said with the whole James Bond thing. You shouldn't have been able to keep making James Bond after Albert R. Broccoli died. He was the writer of the books.
That makes
You
sense
can't.
when they were asking Jesus about the past things. When I think it was Peter that was with them, and then they saw the two glorified Moses and Abraham next to Jesus, and I think it was Peter was like, "Oh, let's make a tabernacle to Moses, and then you, and then Abraham," and then you hear the voice of God saying, "This is my son, to follow him," and the other two faded away. And Jesus would say things like, "Don't put old wine in new wineskins." He's saying, "Don't follow the dead. It's gone. It's over. That was that age. That was that thing. It's no longer here."
Well, it's just
So
like I said, and that's the whole
so
point. It's like you're
why are
not
we
supposed to read
continuing
into
these
like,
things that from people that are dead that have no say in it? Now it's almost like if you were going to talk about karma, like you're giving them karma for something that they're not even alive to have anymore. Like anything you represent for them is really not a representation of them anymore, but you're putting their name on it. Like,
yeah, and that's what I mean. Like James Bond was Albert R. Broccoli's invention. You can't just
yeah, yeah.
or any Ian Fleming, I mean, a little
And
bit
then when he
both, but
passes away, you're still
in the way that we know it. But it's
and
still,
there's no
yeah.
what
That's what I'm
there's
saying. When
no
he passed away,
were there books to
you
make
can't.
off that, or was it like they just started making their own story after that?
Albert R. Brock. Well, yeah, they just started making their own story, and it's all just now. It's just story and script. I don't even think there's a book anymore.
Because he made
It's,
some books that
I
they
mean,
wrote the movies off of, and I could see that. But if
I
there's
don't
no,
know. I don't pay attention thoroughly enough, to be honest. It's just
but yeah, if I made a
it's just
story and then they started making movies on it, and I'm like, I don't really like the way this movie's going, I could pull the I could pull the movie, right? Because it's
but
on my
it's just no.
name.
It's I mean the biggest one is always going to be Star Wars, and now it's like Star Trek. No different. Star Trek is like and it's an embarrassment that these people will even keep acting on Star Trek. I
Hmm.
don't think the original or is the original people on Star Trek still on it? 'Cause they're pretty woke.
I have no idea. I haven't watched
Star
Star Trek
Star
in
Trek's
such a
pretty
long
woke.
time. The last time I watched it was Deep Space Nine when I was younger, and I didn't
Oh,
really
Deep Space Nine
watch
sucked.
it. I honestly, I didn't
Sucked.
watch it. I would just play Legos and keep the show on so I could build something. I'd have some noise in the background. So I literally,
Look,
like, I heard
I
some stuff, and it was more of a relaxing. It was a very chill kind of thing to watch
I
because
understand.
everybody was just at the bar most of the time, and then people were coming and going from this international bar. I maybe there was more to the
I
story than
understand.
that, but that's all I remember. So it was
Deep Space Nine.
that's all I remember.
Gee, we just kept going to the bar. Yeah, it's a good way to describe Deep Space Nine, actually.
Cheers! We're going just
Pretty.
all these aliens going to this international bar and
What's the time period they were competing with exactly the show you just said.
cheers.
So so
Yeah, it was
so
every famous show was about. And then
you would
Frasier
just change
came
the
from
channel.
Cheers.
You would just change the channel and
Cheers
you
is
would just see more videos of people at different kinds of bars.
then later on they made
Cheers.
Friends, which was kind of like a bar. They're all
Well,
sitting on the
well,
couch.
hold on now. Cheers. What did Taxi offshoot? Taxi created something as well, but I almost want to say, did Taxi create Cheers in a way? I don't think so. Maybe not.
I watched Taxi when I was little, but I don't remember a whole lot because I was too young to really know what the story was even about.
This thing's really in my face. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, you're right, but I don't think we're gonna get giants again this time around. I think the bubble popped. People are no longer gonna live as long anymore. I think it's whatever's gonna happen is gonna help assist to make people live longer again. But unfortunately, this time it's gonna be worse. It's not gonna be good. I
Hmm.
think before it was always like pure and clean air that evaporated up and people would grow on it and the fog would change people slowly and people would even learn to get better eyesight through the fog and stuff like that. But now it's just going to be, like I said, a lot of pollution and like
Well,
cancer.
maybe that'll all fix that. Maybe the world heals itself in a sense
Well, but I think what
by
if it
doing
was
some.
global warming though? What if, not saying global warming particularly, but what if because of all of our trash and stuff like that we've created, that when the ozone does open, like when everything happens and it does melt and like it's like a pollutant mess. That's what I'm saying. It's like
I
all
kind of
this,
wonder
instead
if
of
I kind of wonder if it'll
cars are
just
flipping
be
out.
like blasted out of
o-
existence.
Oil refineries are going to be blown up everywhere, and oil is going to be everywhere in the water. You think like one oil spill is going to be bad? How about every single bit of oil that we already have out of land is just going to be covered in water and saturated out, along with all of our cars,
Oh, you got a
along
good
with all of
point.
our, I mean, all of our packaged materials everywhere.
I'm
It,
guessing
it,
everybody's
it,
going to be taking a hose and putting it into the ocean to be able to get free gas.
that's what
Because
I'm saying. Like,
if it's just bubbling
it's,
up everywhere, then actually
well,
that's
I'm
going to
saying
turn
that,
the
like,
oceans into a giant hellfire.
that's what I'm
If any
saying. We've
spark is lit, the whole thing is just going to go up in flames for sometime. That might be what maybe they pictured as hell back in the day. We're gonna see hell in the ocean, maybe. Because if this all starts moving, all those pipelines, they're gonna crack, they're gonna leak, something's gonna spark it. We're gonna have one massive ocean on fire.
I'm just saying that we're not gonna have any animals. Like you think how could it happen? But it's like we're not gonna have any animals left in the ocean after all that sloshing gets dumped in the
Oh, I'm sure
ocean.
there will be some. The ones that stayed up by the poles, where it might melt quickly. We might even see some new fish appear. Maybe ones that were frozen for a long time might just thaw out and they'll just
Yeah, the next
move
generation's just
around.
gonna be a bunch of gloopy things without backbones and stuff. This is the way to survive.
Yeah,
Or
we're all gonna be snails and just
oh yeah, or
wiggling
literally
around.
like you'll will like become like more and more like insect cockroach.
I, yeah, I kind of wonder about that too. I kind of wonder about the spiritual aspect about it too, because I kind of think even in the movies we saw growing up, it might be the same way of like Ghostbusters, where you know, choose your destroyer, and then you get to choose it. So what if instead of choosing the destroyer, we choose the destroyer's destroyer and don't even imagine it, and it just appears, and then the destroyer gets destroyed instead of Stay Puft Marshmallow Man coming in just
What are you
squish.
talking about?
You know how the gods, was it Zuzu or Zulu? I forgot the god that was the destroyer in Ghostbusters. Remember what that was? He needed the key
No, I
master
don't
and
remember
the
anything
gatekeeper.
Ghostbusters to be honest.
Um, but he,
That's the Matrix, man. The
what?
gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper.
The
Yeah.
Matrix.
Hmm. I don't know. I feel like I'm going a lot off track here, or maybe not, but I don't know.
From where this show's going, no, I'm pretty sure we're right on cue. You're right. You're right there.
Well, essentially, we're talking about the apocalypse or the next, maybe Atlantis popping up. I
Look,
think if this does come to the next stage, I think Atlantis will rise out of the sea. We will see the old Atlantis and probably just the foundation structures, maybe some stuff inside, but
I
I think it's just going to be because what happened with the eye of Atlantis there, or the eye of the Sahara, which is where Atlantis was, the foundation stones are all that's left. If an ocean comes and sloshes it away, it's all going into the ocean, except for what's buried into the ground as foundation stone. So, yeah,
I
if
just think
if a
that
flood came and it washed away your house, all that would be left would be the foundation block. That would be
look,
that.
I think that we had cycles, and I think for the last like maybe, you know, 80 or 90,000 years, one civilization's been like surviving the weathered out cycle. They were pretty strong and they were pretty technologized, and you didn't really see them. And that was like that was these
And what if
Atlantean,
what's
and
in the
then
air, whether it's pollutants or something better, changes our biology, you know? Changes us physically, like we grow
but
taller
that's what
or we
I'm
get smaller or we have longer noses or our ears go pointy like elves or something. I wonder.
I just think that something happened where this last time, or two cycles ago, the Atlanteans didn't survive it out, or
Yeah,
their
they
numbers were small, or
remnants
something
of
was
them
already
probably
happening on the
survived,
planet.
but yeah, it was like a global planet of Atlantia. I don't know if there was any other tribes or nations, but it seemed like probably Atlantis was the main nation on multiple island continents. I think Atlantis at that last time it was an archipelago, a bunch of big continents close to each other, and yeah, I think that's probably what it was.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah,
maybe that's what I mean. Maybe the whole thing happened again. Maybe the devil just was just like and then I'm gonna just, and kill them all. And God just like, told a few Atlanteans back then, like, I'm gonna keep you guys safe. Like, you guys are the best of the best. Go here and do this,
Mm-hmm.
and little do they know that they're really just a pawn for giving just a little bit of information for the future to help start, I mean,
Yeah,
going to
well, I
pawn,
mean, it would make
which
sense. Like
we're
you'd
all
want.
we're all pawns.
Well, I mean, if there's like the chosen
I guess
people
they'd
or
be
the
a rook if
survivors,
anybody's going to be a pawn.
then you'd want people to survive, right? But like,
Well, that's what I mean. Like, I think the devil just likes to wreak havoc. He likes to.
hmm
I think he even gets off on allowing countries to like flourish so he can watch more people like get messed up.
yeah,
Like he knows that if you live if you just it's like World War II. If you just keep beating slaves and beating people and not feeding them,
hmm
all you have is concentration camps. You're not doing anything. You're just
yeah, it would make sense that the
literally
devil is controlled chaos. So like order out of chaos, order of the chaos. The controlled
right.
chaos would be the devil
I
in a
I
sense
well, that's what I mean. I
because it would
think the
make
devil
sense. Like
and
then he because if he can keep the chaos going, it's like keeping an engine going. It's always exploding. It's always burning. It's always being able to. I think that's why we have the left and the right politics that we do. We don't have multiple other politics that we could we're kind of forced one way or another. And that's how we've gone with the presidency. It's gone back and forth. Just a thought. uh, did you freeze up?
why do so many places buy Coke? Like why did you know what I mean? I
I
don't
don't
know. It's
know.
just I don't know. It's just it seems to me like some companies are so big and like I don't know.
Too
It,
big to fail. Is that what you're
well, it's
getting at?
like I see. Yeah, well, it's like they're so big that they just drive up the price of everything because they can,
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, yeah, they're too big to fail.
Hmm.
It's like Coke and Pepsi both are, you know?
Yeah.
All those snack companies
It's interesting. After
piss me
all these
off.
years, nobody's ever been able to get above either of them.
But it's like, yeah, Coke,
The
Pep,
same thing with the
all
same
the
thing with our politics.
Nestle,
Over all these what
Frito-Lay.
50, 100 years, nobody's been able to get above Democrat, Republican. Nobody's been able to get above certain brands of food or
Right, well,
bread or
that's what
something.
I'm saying. It's all because look, I saw Matt Gates went on Tim Pool. Like, really? I mean, Matt Gates is like, I don't know. It's just Tim. It just seems strange to me. I mean, I'm happy for it. I'm not, and I watched like half of it, but it's just like I don't know. It's getting so personal. Like everything's changing. I'm happy for it though. You need to be able to have more engaging conversations. It's like I said, the only real way to fix the government is by having much more like positions of authority and power and check. Like I control the people of this little district,
More
and
checks
you
and
control the
balances,
people.
yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, the taxes need to be distributed completely different. They need to be distributed only from the like the whoever whatever area you're in, you have like a person, right? And let's say he has the ability to make a council, right? And
hmm
most of them establish like a council. Maybe there might be a few that are ran a little bit differently than that due to like whatever reason, right? But for the
hmm
most part, most people have a little council. They have, maybe different amounts of people, different weight, and the people who live there pay the taxes to them, right?
Hmm.
And then they actually have a like state and a federal tax as well, and they pay the state and the federal, and the state and the federal have nothing to do with us. Like we're just our only responsibility is with our little district that we pay our taxes with. And
Hmm.
people who come into it, it's like we have gates up, and if you come into our, just to come into our town, you pay a $5 fee. We have nice stuff, and if you like it, you're going to pay for it. You know, and you can go to the town over, and they don't have a $5 fee, and they really don't have anything, and they don't even have a council. It's like one drunk guy running his entire town, and pretty much there's like, some guy who has, organized some like bounty hunter, like, oh, we'll hire you and protect you if anybody, problems will solve. It's like super libertarian, but the guy just has to collect. I just collect them. All I do is collect the bare minimum of taxes here, that the federal government wants, and the federal government basically only, so it's like people are like, okay, it's fine, like, and you might have like some super rich business factory there because it's like there's no regulations, they can just, people will
Are
work,
you
people
talking
will do
about the
it.
future, or
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It needs to be more divided districts and more independent for each district to do
yeah,
what they want amongst the
I think
people.
it might end up turning into that because this globalization stuff that they want to push isn't going to last. It can't work.
Yeah,
It's too much. It's too far. They're like, oh, we got to fight this climate change. Guess what? You effers are the ones that are creating it because
I
you're
know.
taking all these materials from over here, flying all the way over there, wasting all that fuel, spitting out all this carbon,
And it's like
flying
you
all the
said,
way over
The
there,
Bible
and then
makes
fly
it
all
the
the way
Bible
over
makes
here,
it clear to
and then
like
fly over there,
what
and
we
then come
do
over
is
here.
bad.
It's yeah,
The be, the
it's so
better
much
approach the
it's so
better
much
approach would be
waste
to
with
come
travel.
together. The better
Like
approach would be come together on what's exactly happening with our planet
mhm.
and where it's exactly go. I mean, it's like I said before. I understand the idea of hot and cold created chemical, like gravitational pull to each other that created chemicals to merge together and all that.
Mhm.
But we're in the Big Bang at this point. Once those chemicals hit, somehow it blew out. Everything now really is this push, the whole spiral of gravity going around. It's more along the lines of just the push out of everything than it is, you know what I mean? Uh, you know what I'm saying? Like everything's different because of a big bang, because we're in a big bang push out. I'm saying that you probably have tons of planets and stuff like that that have emerged, just from random hot and cold things,
Yeah.
but they're not like rotating or anything like that. We're only
After a lot of
rotating
other
because
series of things happened after that, then yeah, we're
yeah,
kind of the
that's what I'm saying.
product of all of that.
Like they want to talk about like, oh, all these amazing things happen and all that. But that's what I'm saying. Like even the Big Bang, whatever, how the massive explosion of what the Big Bang must have been to continually push everything so hard outward in space to the point where everything is now. I mean, like I said, the gravity is all about cold going to heat. So the heat's pulling, the cold's pulling into that hot of the sun, and everything's rotating
Hmm.
around that because and there's a bit of a density factor into it, of course, but it's because we're pushing through space and that we get this friction, and friction is what creates that
Yeah, if we're
feeling of
talking about like the
time.
beginning of how things are created and all that, yeah, it could be hot and cold, but it's got to be. I think it was just grid lines, some kind of light grid line that turned into a sound, and a sound. Maybe the sound became light. Maybe it was the sound. Maybe that's how they said it was the word. The word was with God, and then it was created. So the sound waves maybe the sound waves themselves are perfectly flat until they start rippling, and then once it keeps rippling it, I think what it ends up happening is in some way the end of this
It
string
creates it
ends up
cracks and
touching
it
the end
creates a
of this
spark.
string, but it doesn't go in a circle. It somehow goes this way through the end of this screen and ends up touching from the other side of the screen. So I'm actually touching my other arm somehow in the beginning of the universe, but as soon as I push into it somehow with either heat or something, I create this rippling effect, which creates sound, vibration, which probably creates light. Light particles create other things, and the heat of that creates this difference of cold and heat, and then it all starts moving. It gets itself to go.
Well,
Because
you think
isn't there the saying that that which is in motion does not come to a rest unless something pushes against it? So that would explain some things. So if you get something in motion and nothing can stop that, it'll just keep going. That's why with magnets, if you have a spinning magnet with a globe top or something, it almost doesn't want to stop because there's almost no force to want to stop it once you got it spinning. So, I mean, if you're talking about the beginning, yeah, it could make sense. I think whatever it was there, and then it started to wiggle a bit, and then after it started wiggling, we got what we got. But
I'm just saying.
I don't know
that
why
I
we're
think
talking
that,
about
like,
creation stuff right now. I know we were talking about Atlantis, but maybe the Atlanteans figured out this stuff at a higher level, or the older generations figured out at a higher level. They were able to, maybe they were the ones that made the space UFO craft that we see some people talk about today. And then it's like, oh, that's aliens. I think it's just older tech that somehow we came upon, or maybe the Sphinx where they say, where I think it was not Hermes Trismegistus. I think he said there was a spacecraft under the Sphinx's arm. So maybe they had a spacecraft buried under there that they built long ago, that they knew how space works. And now,
well, it's like I said,
now
I
that they
think-
get it, it's
I
like,
think
ooh,
that-
that's from a different planet. Maybe our origins of species came from a different planet,
But I
but
think
we're
the whole
just here
thing was
now.
that the Atlanteans. So it's like the Atlanteans 2 cycles ago survive this thing, right? And they're in. Let's say they're in
Some
good
of them
numbers.
did,
Let's say they're in like 5,000, right? They made this arc themselves in a way that back then and there's like let's not even say 5,000. Let's say 5 million, right?
hmm
And they survive, and they
if they had
come
flying
out.
craft, they could. If they had the flying craft like the UFO stuff, they could just leave the planet. Maybe after a while they got bored and left. Maybe some stayed. And
But it's like I said, it's like I think a lot of it is that once they come out, it's almost like biodome for them. Like, they're trying to survive
oh yeah,
in this
yeah.
like climate, and you think, okay, they'll spread out, they have the technology, things start out good for them. They build these pyramids all around, they start communicating, it starts out good, right? And it's like we're gonna survive, we're gonna bring back the way that things were going. But then you start to realize that, like, after 4 generations or so, you're not dealing enough with family. We have to get this done. Family, the kids are always like, they don't care as much. There's more toys around. There's more. The civilization has started to develop again, and the kids don't really care about the parents' work as much, and they begin to not necessarily understand.
It makes sense
complex-
because they spoiled the kids so much with the kids not having to do much. Kind of like with our generation now, where most of our kids, even us
So-
to some degree, are a bit spoiled from like not having to work as
So
hard.
by then,
So they take
then you
advantage
get
of
these-
it and destroy it. Like when a kid grows up and it gets spoiled with a bunch of stuff, it starts breaking their toys. They don't care. There's no real, like, you got too much stuff. The parent doesn't care. I'll just give you more stuff. Break the toy.
what's what I'm saying is that there was so much work to be done that the Atlantean kids just got neglected as time. Who knows how many generations it took, but the bottom line was the technology slowly got forgotten. and all you had were these slow, small remnants of certain technologies that people would talk about as like gods and stuff like that. Like, oh, they had this spacecraft, or maybe they,
And
maybe
maybe they
they,
also try to get more in tune with nature where they just wanted to get rid of it. And then once they got rid of it, the idea of it, the understanding of how it works, all that was lost. And it was like, oh, those were the guys of old. Those were those
yeah,
old guys with
yeah,
a lot of
they were,
tech and stuff. And they didn't even know how that worked anymore. And they turned into
they just didn't know
cavemen
how it
again.
worked. And that's what I'm saying. Once Atlantis got wiped out 11,000 years ago, because the whole last generation was basically just Atlanteans
So what you're saying is what I
making a technology and forgetting a technology,
so
getting
Ad,
destroyed
so
again.
Adam and Eve could just be remnants of the Atlantis, in a sense. The fruit that lets you live forever. Tech, talking snakes. What if all that was just tech from that time?
Yeah.
You know, I kind of wonder, like, what if that was that? Because before that, because if they had to leave their home in a garden and there was a wall of fire preventing them from coming back, and then they were in a completely different environment where they had to work till they died, and they had a paradise beforehand, that sounds like a different kind of world that they came from. Now, whether that was physical or spiritual, I'm not sure. But, I mean, it could coincide with an apocalypse if that was the case. Or maybe there were apocalypses in between that weren't talked about. Or maybe the Babylon story was that first apocalypse where Atlantis was. Because I would honestly think Babylon was either the remnants of Atlantis or the very end of Atlantis where the tower fell
Well,
and all their tech in the tower.
Maybe Babylon was the attempt to rebuild on Atlantis.
Yeah, maybe that was. Maybe that was because some people say baby lion. I don't know if it was baby lion, but maybe that was the baby of the lion. Maybe Atlantis was supposed to be about the lion. Maybe that's why when they draw, uh,
They would
what is
find
his face?
stuff on
Marduk.
Babylon.
Well, like Marduk from the Sumerian stuff, he's holding a lion, like the lion's his pet, maybe baby or something like that. Maybe he was a part of the representation of the baby lion, or something to do with that. I feel like I'm
What are
getting
we ever
close.
talking about, man? What are we talking about?
Atlantean stuff. Going back to Sumerians. Well, I mean, it says Abraham came from Ur, which is Sumer. So Abraham was a part of that Sumerian thing, which maybe that was the remnants of Atlantis, or maybe that
Look, in the
was
time, that's what I'm saying. In the
that
time of
part.
Sumerian,
So Abraham took his stories
they,
from Sumerian records, which you would say is lore. But I mean, what do we do now? Do we say everything is all fake now? Well, yeah, some of us say we're being faked on stuff, but we generally try to believe the history of what's happened as far as wars and who did this and who the great people are. We try to believe so they also did believe that too.
so all
They
right.
didn't just think it
So
was just stories. They believed it as well, at the same way we
all right.
believe what's going on right
So
now.
basically, here's the way I'm seeing it. Then
All right.
you have 26,000 years ago, right? That was the last generation, and then you have the generation before that. Like I said,
So you're saying we're 26,000 years old as a generation.
yeah.
So then the
The,
Bible is
the
representing something way, way beyond. Because they said there's going to be, what, 7 generations before he comes again? And if we're the first of that generation, or 7 more, 26,000 years, 26,000 times 7? Because the Bible does talk about this
possibly,
generation
yeah,
or that
maybe.
generation and all that. So, because
I'm
the Sumerian
saying,
king list was what, 26,000 years each kingship, which probably means
I'm saying that I would say probably like 40, was it 52,000 years ago then? 52,000 years ago, the Atlanteans like were beginning as a culture, and maybe they devoted more points into understanding, or maybe there was something left behind from them from a previous culture that gave them a valuable clue early on, or something like that. but they were just the advanced civilization, and this is all 52,000, and everything that they did was much more advanced in the ideas that even their materials were not, I mean, they were much better under that, they lived underground in pockets and stuff like that. You're hearing me. Everything was all underground, so things were all hollowed out underground and stuff like that. Above ground always had roots. They learned how to focus the roots and keep the trees growing, but still live. So their houses were branches with the
Maybe they
trees and
lived
all that.
underground because the dinosaurs and stuff were too big and would attack them.
Right, right.
Or
Maybe that.
maybe
Maybe right.
the atmosphere wasn't all that breathable. Or
Well, either way. So you remember there was even a flooding and all that. That's what I'm saying. After these floods, all that kind of stuff, or they're like the mudslides and all that kind of stuff is just wiped and gone anymore.
yeah,
But the
because if it
average,
starts
I'm saying,
flooding, you're going to have houses, debris, dead animals, dead people, all kinds of materials moving in on you very fast, plus mud from the ocean being kicked up. And so it's going to be muddy water with a
I'm
bunch of
just saying
other
that
stuff
I
moving
think that
moving around.
most Atlanteans at the time of the original Atlanteans that they were very, very like conscious of being biodegradable. The reason that you don't see anything from them and their remnants, and that's what I'm saying. It's all that same period of like, oh, why can't we find anything in that before Lucy? And it's because that they burned their bodies after they were dead. It was like tradition. You didn't not burn
There,
your
a lot of
bodies.
old traditions actually still do that, and Indian cultures will do that. And if you look up at what Indians do, they'll get rid of all the properties too and burn that as well, because that will keep a signature resonant, a signature residue of the previous person to maybe want to come back and reincarnate, because you get attached to everything you have in your house, who you are, people that you know, everything like that. If you can unattach, then you can move on. So that's what they think about the
I
reincarnation
just think
cycle
that's
with
what I'm
that. So
saying.
they
That
don't want you to.
they're
So they would get rid of all the things. They would burn them or melt them down, honestly. So maybe you could be right. Maybe they did that too in a sense. They got rid of it all
their
in a
technology was all about being like to be honest, I really think it was all about being like one with nature. In fact, that's what I'm saying. They even built the pyramids and the idea that they could help the planet
yeah.
in being more stable
I think that was the
and they
initial
could
attempt of the good side of the Atlanteans. They were trying to do that natural thing to help the planet. So they built the pyramids there because they knew that the other earth, like you said, the earthquakes are on the other side, or the volcanoes are on
so
the other side.
so
Sorry, I just wanted to throw that in there, but
well, no, yeah, no, I agree with you. So the 26,000 year mark is coming. And this is like the most advanced. So they're ready for it. They know. They think they've already calmed it down with the pyramids that they built. They have everything active, to. But it goes wrong. It just completely like f's up, and it's wiped. And this is all like 50 some thousand
and
or 26
you know what the only
26
thing
some
that
thousand
could,
years ago.
you know what the only thing that could really like do that, the reason you don't even find metal and stuff, lightning. You could have an earthquake which could suck down a town. Sure, there's sinkholes and all that, but that doesn't happen everywhere. And floods, yeah, they could
Well,
wash away the
I
foundations and all
think
that.
that's why
But
we have
if you
some
have
sinkholes and stuff
massive
like that.
lightning, if you have massive lightning, it'll melt everything. Like what I think it was the 1920s or something like that. The telegraph wires were going on fire. They were just lighting up on fire. It just the pressure or the ionosphere contacting the earth and the lightning going up and dispersing the energy from the planet would just fry everything as a lightning bolt. Maybe that's why the stories of Thor and the lightning gods and all that of the old is just because of massive lightning strikes that would just nuke things, like just just
Like, well,
just
like maybe they had machines that could get the sparks started, which would
but then it would all melt.
chain react to.
But if it was strong enough lightning bolt, it would just melt all that metal. The metal turns into a
Yeah,
just pool of.
but not if maybe they had. So I'm saying maybe he had some kind of special kind of metal
Maybe
a
most
special
of
kind
those
of
people
handle.
had too much electronics and it melted most of people with all that metal at the time.
But
Because
that's
I
what I'm
mean,
saying. Like a
what other
lot.
thing could happen besides maybe wind? Okay, wind maybe throws something somewhere, but it would still be there. You'd still see it. Like if they had some old metal, like you saw that one old time clock that they had, probably from the Atlantean time. That machine with the gears are like, how did they do this? They didn't. They were knuckle grinders back then. No, they were smart people, and that apparently was found. You remember seeing that petrified gear that was supposed to be part of some machine? That was
Yeah.
probably from the Atlantean
Well,
times. That
they
survived.
showed they showed it. It's a star constellation thing. Joe Rogan did something where he said you can buy them. They said you can buy the fixed piece of it. Although we don't really understand exactly what it does, but it
Yeah,
definitely had something to do with marking the star constellation parts, like in order,
yeah.
like
They weren't total knuckle grinders. They knew what they were doing, and for the pyramids to be
that's what I
lined
mean.
up perfectly with the stars, they knew where to put it, why to put it there, and they had a reason for it. It wasn't just like, oh, this looks pretty.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Look, the stars symbolize exactly the rotation of our planet. We know that where the stars are, they don't move.
So they could predict the weather then too. I bet you any money because they knew how that
Well,
worked. They
that's
could
what I'm
probably
saying.
predict how the weather was
Because
going to work.
because as we spin, we see the stars exactly where they are. They're never going to move. But as we spin in slight variations for frictions and all that, because remember, we're our planet is spinning around an entire thing and spinning around like that, and there's friction. I
Yep.
mean, we're being blown out. I mean, like there's a lot of interaction of heat and stuff coming off of our planet and all that. Like cold is being absorbed. Like there's a lot of things going on to
Hmm.
make all this happen.
Yeah,
I mean, look,
dude. I think we're gonna figure this all out honestly, and
time exists. I'm not saying time doesn't exist, but the thing is, all right, this is the best way to put it. Time exists, but there really was no way to record it. What we have is like a great way to record time because if you can't record it, it doesn't really exist in one way or another. Time can fluctuate. You understand what I mean? If you had different variables, time would move differently and all that.
mhm.
And things would grow differently if the sun was slightly further away or slightly different radiation giving off and all, everything can be like a slight difference. I
Mhm.
mean, imagine if our planet moved twice as slowly spinning. I mean, would that make everybody like twice as old? Would
I
time
don't know.
feel twice as slow? You know what I mean? There's really no variable to time when you think about it like that. Like
Hmm.
it would just be different for everybody.
Yeah, I kind of wonder. I think maybe if there was the canopy above and we weren't able to see the
But
sun
you,
as well, or we
but
weren't
you
able to see
understand what I'm
certain
saying?
things as well.
Our own consciousness is relevant to the speed of time.
Hmm.
You understand what I'm
So,
saying?
so what if it wasn't thousands of years? What if, based upon how the planet rotated with a big canopy where we could see things differently, they recorded time differently? Maybe it was recorded based upon how many moon cycles there were. So, what if you translated 25,000 years into moon cycles? So, 25,000 moon cycles would be how many years we have right now? What if the way that people saw things differently, they had to record it differently? And I kind of wonder about that because, there's so many different stories about things. What if it's just they're trying to calculate it based upon the day you get up and go to sleep, but then it just, because they can't see the sun anymore, now they got to find a different way to do it. And then once they see, maybe the moon was bigger, because I mean, I see in new games too, like they show a gigantic moon in the background. And it's like, but for the game, it's supposed to look like that. Like the moon is supposed to be that close, even though it's kind of like, it's like, are they trying to tell us something here? Like, like maybe when
That
things
we're
change, it's
crazy.
not just the planet that changes; it's just the things on the outside. The space looks different. Maybe some of the planets look a little bit different. Like if you looked at Aristotle's map of where Atlantis was, north was pointing south. North was pointing south, but based upon the geography of how he drew it. Now at the time, maybe it did point south, or where our south is now, that was north, and then it
But you also have to
changed
factor in but was
because it went
North
through maybe
always?
like a couple cycles, and then the North Pole moved to that cycle, and
But
now everybody's like,
what based the North to the North Pole? Look,
what?
we say North is because of the North Star.
No, it's because of magnetism. The North Star is there because it's always in the northern section. It's all based on magnetism. The North Pole's
But
there
why do we
because
call it why do we call it North?
it's the side that well, essentially the north gives off the energy to the south, and then it slowly sucks through that iron core to come back
But you
to
understand
give
what
it
I'm
back
but you
off.
understand what I'm but you understand what I'm saying though. It's just that like
It's just that
you could
phenomena that we know about it. That's why we know that. Other than that, I think it has to do with the fundamentals. So I think north is a magnetic thing, and maybe everything started with magnetism to start more than a
but what if
sound.
what if it was just a copy of an older thing, an older map, and he just wrote it and he copied it exactly that way? And you can say it's like, from his time, it's like, but
Maybe he
that's
was
not
trying to
even.
describe the previous time because I think maybe he did. Maybe he
That's what I'm
knew.
trying to say is
Yeah,
maybe that was the whole point of it, is to describe the
because
previous
Aristotle was, I
time.
think, in the thousands, right? Or was he in where? What time period was he in?
I
He
don't
wasn't
know.
really, really long ago. He was like, I think, no, he was Renaissance time, right?
I have no clue. I'm bad with philosophers' age periods.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, yeah, he was probably because I mean, look at uh, what Da Vinci was drawing. He had access to the pyramids of Alexandria because he was trying to draw tanks, flying machines, all way before anybody else was drawing anything like that. It was like not even the period where anybody was even trying anything like that. He had access to the library of Alexandria, which probably is why he had some extra knowledge about previous tech. I mean, it just makes sense. Like he's trying to draw things.
Well, that's what I mean. I think that that's like the whole society. I think that things kept getting more and more.
Maybe even Tesla had some knowledge about that past too. To
Well, I think that with our generation, with this last generation, it started out for the first 12,000 years in that previous cycle. If it really, does have that, like,
mm,
again, like, people try to live adequately, people, and it's just, I don't know.
mm,
12,000 years ago, everything changed.
yeah,
Everything, that last flood happened, and then, I think that's what I mean. I think that people were living for like thousands of years, 1,000 years at a time
maybe he had the
prior.
tech to know what to do to make them live that long. Could be atmosphere.
Well, I
Could
don't
be
know if it
tech.
was just, I was like, I don't think it was just the tech. I think the planet was so clean
That could be
that
too,
there
because
was,
you look at some of these underwater creatures that live in a really clean water environments where they're breathing in these clean water, and they live what 200 years. I think the
yeah,
turtles live like 200, maybe some sharks live up to thousands of years or however long they live. I mean,
I don't think that's true.
well, I don't know. I mean,
Do they?
some animals live like ridiculously long times. I forgot the number, but yeah, you might be right on
But
that. Could just been a cleaner
in,
and
I mean, trees certainly can live for 1,000 years.
yeah, there was a tree that lived at the beginning of when Jesus was born that I heard about. You could count the rings, you know.
That's pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah. Well, some trees are just clones of themselves and they just branch off very much like grass or mushrooms and stuff like that.
The,
So,
the point, it's just, I don't know if there is a point. Is there
Well,
a point?
I think we made the point. We made the point that there had to be something smarter, higher tech than what we are right now. Not saying we can't get to that, but I think there was more advanced
I
stuff
just think
before.
that
Because I mean, just the
even then the
stories of
lat
old are just so like look at that chimeras. They're trying to clone sheep. They're trying to maybe guess try to clone people. They're trying to like I mean with the gender changes right now, and they're probably going to make chimeras in the future
Yeah, but
of
I
other
think that
things.
even the
It's
last
like
generation, you had a whole match of not necessarily good versus evil, but I think that that's where you get all that like warlocks and all that. I think that 20s basically at this point anything between like 30 some thousand years ago basically. I think you had a lot of wars of like cuz look how the hobbits lived. They lived right in the holes in the ground and stuff like that. They I think
are you
again,
making
you
fun
had
of the little people?
no, but I'm saying you had most of the world was just like I want to be evolving as a human, or not like it's just like or not as human, like it's like a part of nature.
Hmm.
Just like leave me alone. I'm just gonna go forage for some nuts every day and keep my house tidy and maybe listen to some nice music and stuff like that. Beyond
Hmm.
that, I don't need more. I don't want fancy gadgets and communicating with everybody in the world
Yeah,
and
it could be
and
very
and
well that the past Atlantean, what ended up breaking it down, was what got blamed, and then everybody went El Natural after that because
but that's what I mean. I think that there was a group of Atlanteans that were all about like technology and all this and that, and
Mhm.
that's where that city was. That's where Atlantis was. And you know,
Mhm.
I think there was a war a long time ago. I think that's what I mean. Like like eventually people got tired of it. That maybe Atlanteans want to push out, and there's something happened where people got and you started to having. That's what I mean. Like these like wizards and war. I mean these massive wars, orcs and all that kind of like it. In a way, it really did happen. Like there was. This is all like what really happened. Like
Yeah, it's funny how we say
in
it's
a
all
way,
myth in the
like
past, but we're actually starting
35,000
to
years ago.
yeah, we're starting to make it now. Like they're gonna make synthetic beef out of your own DNA. Like we're gonna be eating. I mean, it sounds fantastical, but then they'll be like, yeah, we can prove it. Here it is. And it's like, oh, but all that stuff in the past that was all just stories. Well, if it sounds so similar to now, it's kind of like that whole if it looks like a duck, smells like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's a duck.
I
It's
just,
like
I'm imagining your synthetic beef like outline. It's like how it goes. It's just like, all right, we just need a little bit of your DNA.
we
So it's
just
like,
graft a
a little
little bit of
slob,
your skin and then we
slob. And it's like, all right, so we're going to go ahead and it's like, just basically it opens up and it's like, hi, guys, I'm not sure. I thought I was just over there, but now I'm over here. And they're just like, bam, and shoot you in the face. They're like, all right, let's start cutting up the meat now. And it's like, so you just make a clone of me and then kill me? Yeah, what was your plan? I thought you just like, I don't know, made like pieces. I guess now I think about it, yeah, I guess that's the only way you would do it is make a whole clone of me and
yeah.
pieces of me. I just didn't think it was gonna be like
Did
I'm
you see that one
alive. I thought,
TV series where they wanted to make a better version of you, and then you go in there, and then they
yeah,
say
it's
they're gonna
great, right?
and then they're gonna like
That's kind
build
of what
you,
I was thinking in my head
but
of.
they
Yeah,
make a
yeah, I
clone
did
of
see that.
you, and then they just put you in a bag and suffocate you, and then the clone's alive. Was that a movie?
Yeah, no, it was a TV show. It was great.
It was funny though, but it was
It was
scary
great.
too, because I was like, holy cow! Like all the graves of everybody they just put in a bag and just died. And then the clone comes out and he's like, hey, I'm better. Yeah, that's pretty scary,
Yeah, it
but
was.
that's probably the truth. They're like, oh, we'll just make you better, but it's just a cloned version of you, and then they kill you. And then,
Remember Rick and Morty, where they did almost the same kind of concept there too, where they say we'll get rid of all your toxins, and
I
then
think I saw that one.
they literally have a personality of Rick and Morty's toxic behavior in a tank, But
Yeah.
Rick and Morty are like, yeah, we feel so much better, but it's like because you literally like took a part of yourself out of yourself, you know.
Yeah, that's why I don't
It's
totally
pretty.
trust Elon Musk, and maybe he is the new Pontius Pilate. Maybe he is the new Nero. Because I mean, he like doing the whole transhumanation thing or well, I forgot what it's called. But you put your mind into a robot. All they would do was put a copy of your mind in a robot and kill you, and then just if they don't like what the robot's saying, just delete you. It was the whole point of it
Well,
is
sooner or
moot,
later but
right?
see, sooner or
It
later
doesn't.
it's gonna happen that when you get put online and you're a bunch of things, somebody's gonna somehow find a way to copy that neural link connection, create it on its own neural link connection, and then literally be able to talk to themselves on some kind of like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, then when you're not needed anymore, you get deleted, so you don't really live forever. I mean,
but
look at
it's
how
like then
many old
they can say, you
websites
know,
that we
like,
delete because it's like, yeah, we don't want to use it anymore. All that information's gone. MySpace, Facebook, another 5, 10 years, that'll be gone.
yeah,
You
all
know,
your
and then,
friends you collected and look through, enjoy
eh,
them out, take pictures of them because that's the only thing you'll have. And then don't store those pictures on certain things because
yeah, I barely use Facebook anymore. What I've realized is that, yeah, I've got digital stuff,
excuse me,
but I went to make
getting
more
tired.
actual photocopies of things because I realized if that all gets deleted, it's gone. Like all your memories are gone. I'd rather have some actual photos that aren't digital, just in case it's like a backup. In case they go, oh, we're deleting the whole internet today. Everything you did gone. Bye bye. We don't like what you said. Sorry. You might as well have some physical stuff, you know, because this
You want
digital stuff is easy to get rid of.
you want to call it soon? I'm getting pretty exhausted. Thinking all this
Yeah, I was gonna say
hypothetical
that
what if
like
nonsense is
I was
really
gonna say that like a
really
half an
took it
hour
out of me.
ago. We're kind of jumping on a lot of stuff, but I had fun with this. I think this will be enriching
I'll
to
be honest.
whoever watches this. I
I
know we did.
I
I know we
only
jumped
I
around a
only
little,
believe
but
I only believe 50% of what we said was true. Now, obviously, the 50% that I said was 100% true, and the 50% you said was 0% true. But
that's bullshit.
that's just what I believe.
you're you're
I could be
knucking
right. I could
futz.
be wrong.
You
I
you
could be right. I
are
could be wrong.
100% wrong. You're 100% wrong on your 50% beliefs. I can back that up with another
I'm
10%.
willing to say that I'm 50% wrong on 100% of my beliefs.
Okay.
But I'm also willing to say that you're probably 50% wrong on 200% of your beliefs.
No. See that's why we're in a state we're in. Your negative beliefs is why. Anyway, hopefully everybody else enjoyed this.
Hashtag negative
Don't
beliefs. No.
don't listen to anything Brad has to say.
Hopefully
Brad
nobody
is
enjoyed this.
Brad is always like trying to be the negative Nancy here. So I'll just call you Nancy in the future. Um, so we'll see everybody
Call me
later.
Nelly. Negative Nelly.
Negative Nelly. No, I'll call you Mancy. Mancy.
Fancy Mancy. Fancy Mancy.
All right, everybody. Thanks for coming by. If you liked, do one of these. If you didn't like it, I can't help you.
Doesn't matter. Just do one of those, you know, do it downhill. I don't see it.
Put a smiley face on the video or something. And listen to the people that are listening outside because they got nothing better to do. Go give them a like or something.
People would only like it if they've stayed this long. They're staying all the way to the very end. They probably liked it.
I don't even know how long this is here.
I don't know. I'm pretty exhausted today.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.